Hello and welcome to the intersection of money and politics. You're watching Political Capital with me, Karabo Letlata. On this episode, we are marching on the streets with angry union members who want a better national minimum wage. We ask the question, are unions dead? We also speak to the original splinter group from the African National Congress and the longest surviving yet. The Pan Africanist Congress turns 59 years old this month, and even this late in the game, they still want 1 million members. But struggle is commonplace for the Pan Africanist Congress. Before the rubber hits the tarmac, Chris Bishop is on the papers.
First up, a story CNBC Africa has been following for months. Steinhoff International Holdings' former CEO Marcus Uesta has been thrown a lifeline by banks as the global retailer he oversaw for 18 years struggled to survive an accounting scandal that happened under his watch. His personal investment company, Mayfair Holdings, owes Sanlam's capital markets arm, Investec and Absa, a banking unit of Barclays Africa Group, a combined 959 million rand. In the Business Day also, editor's lunchbox, it's not that easy to get rid of Supra Muhumapelo. Despite days of mayhem, the ANC's National Working Committee cannot take a decision on Muhumapelo's future. This is up to either a special sitting or an ordinary sitting of the ANC's highest decision-making body, the National Executive Committee. Then, once again, the Guptas. I owe the Guptas nothing for airlifting me to Russia. So says the Deputy President. David Mabuza says the fact that the Guptas once airlifted him to get medical help in Russia does not mean he owes them anything, and he wants them to be, quote, brought to book. Mabuza flew to Russia in a Gupta-linked jet in 2015 to receive specialized medical care following allegations of poisoning. And finally, a story that features heavily in this week's Political Capital, Saftu members bring Johannesburg CBD to a standstill. Organisers said they were overwhelmed by the number of people who attended the march against exploitative working conditions. Political Capital cameras were there with them.
Fury in the front line of a nationwide protest. At the heart of this protest in Newtown, Johannesburg, is the anger over the minimum wage battle. Unions reject a proposed 20 rand per hour minimum wage. This is just over $1.
It is a sea of red here in Newtown, Johannesburg, as workers, unions and parties alike have heeded the call from the South African Federation of Trade Unions to shut down the nation in protest against a minimum wage of 20 rand per hour. But do unions still have the power to effectively shut down the country?
This protest forms part of a trade union culture that's been part of South Africa since the late 1880s. Unions were one of the driving forces that propelled the apartheid government to accept change, paving way for a democratic South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa cut his teeth as the founder of the National Union of Mine Workers, the biggest union in Africa. There was a time when unions wielded real power in the South African economy. Today's youngsters, however, seem to not value them. Take a street in Sandton, where most are white-collar workers.
I don't really think they're relevant anymore, because people take the action upon themselves. They just decide to do the things. They don't go to the unions before taking action anymore, and they get things done themselves. We feel like we don't need them anymore. When we can do it, why do we need them anymore?
They don't do anything for us. We're just paying. I've got a sister who's at home who's been paying for unions, and she's got a matter that unions needs to look into it, but they're not interested. So I don't think they are wise to be used in 2018.
Sometimes you don't always depend on a trade union, because some of the things their own conflicts, they are just settling the matters for their own good, on to use you in a big way. That is how it works.
It's end of April and they still didn't manage to negotiate for workers. There's still no conclusion, they're still discussing, so they might as well close down, let them.
I think in many cases, since this year, I've never seen any changes through it. and people out there, they're looking forward for it at least to help, but still, it's not.
Depends on how much you earn.
How so?
Yeah. For people who earn below a certain salary, then they would need the unions. They would certainly work for them.
Back in Newtown, the struggle continues. Workers have come out in their thousands to vent their frustration.
Well, this is what it's all about. 20 rand minimum wage per hour. The people here say it's not enough.
On this day, the South African Federation of Trade Unions, Saftu, embarked on a nationwide strike, calling on workers to join protests against the proposed national minimum wage of 20 rand an hour and amendments to the labor laws. Dlamini-Zuma is its leader who defends the role of trade unions.
To fight to improve our wages and to fight to improve our living conditions, to defend workers against the abuses in the workplace, to ensure that there is training and that every worker has a possibility of climbing a ladder to get promoted, to improve their living conditions so that they can take their kids to better healthcare facilities, to better schools, and they can take out their children for picnic, to go to soccer matches, to go and watch a movie. We want a normal life for everybody.
The Pan African Congress is one of the political parties that joined the march. While hopeful for change, its regional organizer in Gauteng admits unions have their flaws.
The question of the union is sometimes maybe they don't focus properly. The question is the union has got power to, in fact, stalemate the country. We can come to a stop, all of us, to force the parliaments to close, to force every institution to close, so that we can listen to as a society. It's not about the union, it's about the entire country as a nation to make things stall. We can stall, Pretoria Parliament, we can stall the one in Cape Town, and we can make trains not to move. Each and every one remain in his house so that the government start listening to us properly. If you sector some points, you are creating yourself as a lame duck.
In the streets of Johannesburg on this day, many joined a union. It shows that where there's a worker, there's hope yet for the union. Aviwe Mtila for CNBC Africa, Johannesburg.
The national chants of data must fall have finally found an ear with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa. The regulator has held month-long public hearings on data costs, and today they announced 4 new regulations to end-user and subscriber services charters. I discussed the changes with the CEO, Wellington Webb. Let's begin with your announcement of the new data cost for end-user regulation. Do you think you've gone far enough? Because South Africans will still be about the nuts and bolts and how much it eventually costs them.
All right. Thank you for having me on your program. So perhaps let's start off with clarity that this was not an announcement about data costs. This is the first phase of the interventions that we are implementing on cost to communicate. And this phase specifically talks to the business rules that operators have implemented, as well as the transparency requirements to protect consumers. So we're only dealing with the issue relating to data expiry or rollover of data, the issue relating to the charging of in and out of bundle, the issue relating to notifications to consumers as they deplete their data bundles to avoid the scenario where people end up with bill shock. The pricing and the cost will come in the second and the third layer program of the interventions.
One of the victories you've scored here is certainly the consent that mobile providers would need from the end user like myself before they charge me out of bundle rates. How long do the providers have until that law is enacted and until they have to start charging me those rates?
Well, effectively, I would say as soon as the regulations are published in the Government Gazette, the rules kick in, and I expect that they will be published during the course of next week. Obviously, this week being a short week and next week being a bit of a short week, one cannot with certainty say on what day, but we're hoping that the regulations will be gazetted in the following week, before the end of the following week, and from then on, operators have a month to get their systems adjusted to ensure that they that they comply.
Why is the issue of data rollover such a tricky one for ICASA to navigate?
I think it's complex. I think if you had followed our public consultation process, you would have had industry up in arms about the fact that the longer the expiry period, the higher the cost is going to be. Conversely, we had civil society saying to us, those expiry periods do not really protect the lower end users, because ideally the smaller the bundle, the shorter the expiry period. The bigger the bundle, the longer the validity period. So we had to navigate it in a manner that allows those low-end consumers to continue to enjoy the benefit of having their data not expire. And the best way to do it, instead of imposing a period, was to say, if I've got data today and it's valid, for argument's sake, for 3 months, and before the end of the 3 months I top up, the data that I have should be rolled over into the next cycle. So ideally, we think that will address the concerns around the expiry. However, we're going to monitor how the industry implements these rules. And if we still feel that they are not implementing in a manner that affords the consumer maximum protection, we will then revisit the regulations and perhaps end up with prescribed periods.
You mentioned this was the first phase, so there are 2 more phases to go until we possibly have lower rates in terms of data costs. How long or how rigorous do you expect those processes to be?
So the second phase has already started, and that phase relates to identifying the relevant markets within the broadband value chain that we think presents competitive bottlenecks. And that we're going to come out with a list of the markets that we think require specific focus and review, I think in the second quarter of the current financial year, which would be around September, because we're currently completing the consultative process. And once we have those markets confirmed, we will then immediately thereafter zoom in and conduct a market review in the relevant market, and probably do the cost analysis and assess whether the level of pricing is what it ought to be.
My final question, you looked at data pricing within the BRICS countries. How does South Africa fare compared to its BRICS peers, and is there room for cutting?
I think in the benchmark that we did, which was about 2 months ago, and we presented this in Parliament, I think in about a month ago, amongst the BRICS countries, I think we were okay. We were in the middle. We were not the cheapest. We were not the highest. And we also looked at the SADC countries. Again, we were not too far out of kilter, but we were not the cheapest. So one could argue that there is certainly room for prices to still come down. I think it's just about getting certain elements that are required to bring the prices down into the mix. One of the issues that at least mobile operators have continuously raised about why they are not able to bring down the cost to the levels desired is that they have challenges with the spectrum that they have. They need additional spectrum, and from a government and a regulatory perspective, we need to get that process going and hopefully afford them the flexibility they require to bring the adjustments to the levels we need.
After the break, it was born in 1959, and this month it turned 59. The Pan Africanist Congress of Azania discusses challenges facing the party right now. More after the break. Welcome back to the intersection of money and politics. You're watching Political Capital. It's been a long, hard slog for the Pan Africanist Congress since the dawn of democracy in South Africa. The party of Robert Sobukwe has been riddled with infighting, declining membership, yet besides all of this, they still want 1 million members. I had a discussion with the new PAC president, Norius Moloto. Joining me now to discuss the fortunes of the Pan Africanist Congress is its new leader, Norius Moloto. Dr. Moloto, I thank you for your time. Let's begin by looking at the politics of the time. The Pan Africanist Congress as a movement is not quite the force that it was in the past. How do we get the PAC to be the voice that has been there from the liberation struggle to South Africa's democracy? How do we get back the stature that used to be the PAC?
Yeah, first is for the PAC to reorganize itself, and that's what we are doing. We are renewing the party in terms of the leadership, the structures, the focus is completely different. But we are also creating a new relationship with our people, our communities. And that we believe will restore the PAC and the confidence of our people into the PAC. That is the path which was chosen by its founding leadership.
You're a new leader yourself. I mean, not very different to Cyril Ramaphosa. You were both elected in December. You are the new hope of the Pan Africanist Congress.
Yes.
Where do you think you can claw the support as the ANC itself tries to claw back the lost support? Where do you think your ground is where you can garner the most support leading up to the 2019 elections?
The previous elections have shown that PAC support is nationwide. This analysis was made, and we have been consistent since 1994. What we are intending to do is to sustain that, but to increase that by going back to work with our communities, our people, and consolidate our base. We know where our base has been since 1960s, since the PAC was formed. What we've been doing, we've been linking, re-establishing contact with our own communities, the families of the founding members and the communities. When I went there, and when we go and interact with these people, they're still staunch supporters and members of the party. They've never gone anywhere. So ours is to link in a more structured and systematic way with our own base. Now, the bases of the PAC are nationwide, are worldwide, and what all we are required to do as leadership is to consolidate and to re-establish them.
Dr. Maloto, the PAC turned 59 this year. It was founded in 59. And when it was founded, it had a lot of youth drive, if you will, that really cared about the fundamentals of the liberation struggle. But chief among them was the return of land. And now land politics have found their way onto the contemporary issues in South Africa.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing for the PAC? Can you use that to launch the PAC into better, higher grounds?
PAC is known for the energy of young people within itself. The leadership of the PAC in 1959 was of the young people led by a 30-year-old president. It was more energetic. That is where we are focused in, because without the energy of the young people, you cannot be able to make it. But having said that, we have indicated as a party that everybody now if you look at our political manifesto, everybody which justifies the creation and the formation of the PAC and the political line of the PAC. Now everybody in the country, all political parties, are seeking to understand, to talk about the same things that the PAC has articulated. For us, it makes progress, but it also reveals something that the PAC has been doing in a very unnoticed way. After being frustrated with a lot of other things that happen in the politics of elections and some of the problems, we did not just fold our arms. We went back to our communities and our people and preached what the struggle was all about, the liberation agenda. Now, this message has gone through, because now everybody, today, the masses of our people, the communities, the African people, if you talk any other politics that does not talk to their material interest, needs, which is fundamentally starting with the land, they don't hear you. They just leave you.
Is it an issue that will be hijacked from you, as I'm saying that, you know, your original struggle aspirations really revolve around land, but now it seems like a conversation that's been hijacked by the EFF and the ANC?
Yeah, you will never successfully hijack a political line of a party and its articulation. because it's original. Otherwise, if you run with something that is not original, it's fake, and you are going to do a lot of mistakes. Now, the land question can never be resolved without inclusion of the PAC, because we have the key and the formula that is original to the demand of the land. Because what we are saying is that the struggle in Africa, throughout Africa, Africa had no name other than Africa until the colonialists came, subdivided it, and named it the way they've named it. Now, and what we are saying, the forebear before us raised the issue of the reason why they want to struggle. They wanted to repossess the land so that they can continue with their own civilization, their own development, both socially and economically. And that's what we are talking about when we talk of the land, because we are saying the foundation of economy, the foundation of a social order can only be laid on the land.
People will look at the PAC and say, you have only a single seat in the National Assembly, 0 seat in the National Council of Provinces. How are you going to influence the national debate if that's the force that you have?
The PAC in 1960 was not in Parliament. And throughout, we were never in Parliament, but we influenced the politics of this country. The politics of liberation struggle in this country is based on the activities and the programs of the PAC. So that doesn't bother. We are not bothered by what people are saying. We are bothered by what we are doing in terms of our program, in terms of our strategy, in terms of our targets, in terms of what we need to do as a party.
South Africa has hundreds of political parties, hundreds, and they all come out during election time really clawing at each other. But we see smaller parties sometimes, you know, becoming deal brokers in areas of contestation, as we've seen from the municipal elections. Has the Pan Africanist Congress thought about consolidating with another party, namely someone like the EFF, whose land, you know, policies are not too far off from the Pan Africanist Congress?
Look, today the political parties are formed purely for purpose of getting into the election, and they are like economic projects. Once again, they are not original. They are not formed so that they can pursue what to call a long-term development of our people and resolve the problems going into the future. They are formed so that people can go to Parliament, and they can go to the provincial legislatures and earn a living, and normally it ends there. That's not original. That's not what we're pursuing. However, coming to consolidation, yes, our overall strategy does not rule out consolidation. We do not want to find ourselves where we've always been, particularly in terms of how to approach to the elections, how to approach to what to call coalitions, fronts, alliances, and so on. Now we are in the drawing board on that issue. We are talking, we are looking, and at the right time, I think we'll make the correct type of alliances, coalition, deals that will go into the 2019 general elections.
It's not easy, and it's definitely not cheap running an election campaign. I mean, the last time there was murmurs that the ANC ran a R1 billion campaign. Surely money also is a factor in political exclusion and whose message gets out. How are you going to address that?
Yeah, look, that has always been a challenge. Basically, throughout the world, if you look into the elections themselves, parties end up being bought by those with money. And they end up going to Parliament representing the policies of those rather than our people. Now, we debated this issue in the PAC. Principally, we want to link up with the masses of our people without buying them, where they will fully realize that what is critical in Parliament is the agenda of completing the liberation, the agenda of making them free, the agenda of giving power to themselves to develop themselves.
But it requires money to be upfront and face-to-face with the same constituency.
Yeah, but the money comes from human resources. Our people are a resource. And what is more critical is the consciousness, the awareness of our people. We believe that at this stage our people are more aware than at any time before since 1994. They are able to stand for the truth. Yes, money is important, money is needed, but who has money? Money has those business people, those corporate that normally dish them to dilute even the manifestos, what you call the promises that political parties are making to the voters end up becoming nothing because of money.
Becoming a PAC president must be an honor for anyone who gets to lead this great movement.
Yes.
And I am sure that you have aspirations for what you would like to see at the end of your tenure.
Sure.
And that is a bigger PAC, a much more resolute PAC, and a PAC that, you know, shapes form of the national discourse. How are you going to do that?
Look, the size of the PAC that I would like to see is the minimum of 1 million members. Now that
the ANC is struggling to get to that number.
Yeah, now we are going there. We have made this decision to get there. We have programs to get us there, and we are sticking with our programs. And previously we did not implement these programs systematically. We are determined, we are training cadres, we are training members, we are working to achieve this goal. And we will achieve this goal, we are quite definitely sure. And we will consolidate the support. We are training young people as cadres in the party. And we believe systematically, if you look in the role that is played by the PAC with the students, PASMA, with the PICO, with women, etc., with workers, we are confident to reach that particular goal. And reaching that goal, nobody will ever touch the PAC.
That's all we had for you on this episode. Remember, Tuesday is a public holiday, and that means we only see you on Thursday at 6:30 Central African Time, only on your Money channel.